Like, I don't know. Ask him. No, don't do that.
Great. Yep.
Visit? No. I already started doing this.
I know that. What if the person trying to but then he valid.
That's from the building we watched on the TV. Yeah, hell's on the flag. I've never been to the Twin Tower. You know who had? No.
Well, I have video, but it's in Colombia.
Wait, that Twin Tower?
Yeah.
Wait, did you go inside?
Yeah.
Did it collapse? Did it collapse?
Yes, it collapsed.
Were you in there still?
No. See here, they're gonna start. They're gonna start. See, they're gonna start right now.
I see a little head.
But he's 3, you think? They're about to start.
You will have to ask the owner.
Exactly, and they're about to start, and they're about to, it's a minute before they start the ceremony.
What?
Do you need internet?
We have it.
Ah,
Yeah,
okay.
thank you.
Headset. He's desperate to go to the
Where? Where's he gotta go?
I don't know. The dog is gone.
You gotta go to the bathroom. You gotta go to the bathroom. I don't even know where you can go.
Stuff like this that annoys me.
Look at you, just go with me. Look, I had to organize it. Hola amigos de Latinos en Michigan TV, les habla Liliana Ospina y me encuentro en la estación de bomberos de Brighton, en la ciudad, en Livingston County, en la ciudad de Brighton, y como pueden ver estamos a punto de comenzar la ceremonia para recordar el aniversario número 20 de los ataques terroristas del 11 de septiembre. Entonces vamos a hacer una transmisión en vivo. Para los que no sepan, la ciudad de Brighton existe un pedazo de metal que era parte de la estructura de las Torres Gemelas, y ellos lo trajeron hace algunos años acá para tener un recuerdo de ese fatídico hecho que ocurrió exactamente hace 20 años. Hace 20 años el orden mundial cambió como tal. Hace 20 años los terroristas de Al Qaeda hicieron un ataque a Estados Unidos. Empezaron con las Torres Gemelas, luego hicieron otro ataque en el Pentágono y luego tenían un avión que supuestamente iba a ir hacia la Casa Blanca, pero la gente que iba en el avión se dieron cuenta y pelearon contra los terroristas, y por esa razón ese avión se estrelló cerca de Pensilvania. Entonces este es un día muy, muy especial por lo triste, por el significado tan triste que tiene el 9/11 para todo el mundo. Recuerden que después de que pasó el 9/11, todo, absolutamente todo cambió, todo cambió. Todo se volvió más fuerte, más restricciones, y ahora pues con lo que pasó con Afganistán hay mucha tristeza por todo esto. Entonces estamos acá esperando a que la transmisión inicie para compartir con ustedes esta importante ceremonia.
Excuse me. Would you be willing to move the camera?
Yes,
right
yes,
about
yes,
1
yes,
foot
yes.
or so?
There.
Let me see.
Sorry.
Just like 6 more inches. There we go.
Perfect. Sorry.
No worries. But you know,
You are.
Where's Daddy going?
So,
What did Riley get a water bottle?
I think those are Roman.
Roman.
Oh. Yeah. Where did you get that? You can get water there.
They're about to start.
why are you with them?
Sí, they're about to start.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's Lenny. Last year did okay.
All metal water bottles get like that. If I don't want metal water bottles, then that happens.
All right, this is your 5-minute warning. We're going to start in about 5 minutes. Sorry for the slight delay, but we'll be starting in 5 minutes. Feel free, fill in the chairs. We'd love to have you up close. And our uniformed personnel will be coming in, and then we'll get the program started.
You like that? We were practicing. The honor guard brought the colors. And anyway, so my daughter's like, "Oh my gosh."
La ceremonia está por comenzar, un retraso de algunos minutos. Está programada para que empezara a las 8:30 de la mañana, pero están esperando que llegue más gente. Y como les decía, hoy se cumple el aniversario número 20 de los ataques terroristas del 11 de septiembre. Nunca olvidaremos lo que pasó hace 20 años. Yo me acuerdo que era una practicante, estaba haciendo mi primer internship en un noticiero en Colombia que se llama, o en un canal de televisión en Colombia que se llama City TV, y me acuerdo que pasaron los atentados y la mayoría, casi ninguno de los periodistas hablaba inglés, entonces a mí me tocó empezar a traducir todos los news release que llegaban de Reuters, de AP, para que los periodistas empezaran a transmitir en vivo información sobre lo que estaba pasando con los ataques terroristas, porque recuerden que duró un tiempo antes de que se supiera que era Bin Laden, que era Al Qaeda, entonces es importante que la gente sepa eso. Hi, I'm Liliana from Latinos in Michigan.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah, so 15,000 people follow
Oh my
me.
goodness.
My husband is a vet, and when that happened, it changed my life.
Yeah.
I was in a newsroom in Colombia, translating information. I went to the Twin Towers in 1993.
Yeah.
So I
Wow.
feel devastated. So I want to share this with my followers.
Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Okay.
I know, chewing gum.
Water right there. That woman.
Give me some water. Torsion.
36 seconds.
That's Roman?
Yeah.
Erset, whose water is that?
Roman,
Where did you get that one?
you got it? Well, there's somewhere. Where do you go?
Oh, they're coming. I don't know.
She went petting that doggy.
Oh my God.
I'm fairly brief.
Well, technically you're 8.
Big five.
Right. No sé si los puedan ver, pero ahí está llegando todo el personal de los bomberos y first responders. Recuerden que muchos de ellos murieron tratando de rescatar a las personas que estaban atrapadas en las Torres Gemelas. Entonces, para que no se olviden de la importancia de los first responders. Pueden ver allá atrás. Gracias a ustedes por verla.
That's one of my favorites.
And I heard it.
We're about to start.
Ladies and gentlemen, good morning and welcome to the Brighton 9/11 Memorial Service. If you could please stand for the presentation of the colors as well as the singing of the National Anthem from Andrea Peterson.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hail at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, be proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
You may be seated. On behalf of the entire Brighton Area Fire Authority, I want to welcome you to today's ceremony. I think most of us probably woke up today and thought through certain things and maybe some statement like, I can't believe it's been 20 years. And maybe you've thought about that this week as we all dive into the things that happened around September 11th. I don't think September 11th in 2001 started off much different than today. Bright blue skies, beautiful things. And I think if we remember back to September 10th, the country was in a weird position. Remember, we had the hanging chads and political infighting with the Bush v. Gore. Maybe not too different from where we might be sitting today. And when we say September 11th changed everything, it truly did change America that day. This memorial has been here, and this is actually our 10th year. 10 years ago, in 2011, we hosted probably the biggest crowd I think we've ever seen. And the memorial truly came as something that may have started with our fire department in reaching out an application for the many pieces of steel. But it took our dedicated men and women to work to get that piece. But what you see behind us, that jagged steel, rusting in color, took a lot more than just us going and getting a piece of steel. Everything here was really part of the community. From the bricks you walk on, to the concrete that holds it, to the steel that holds it in its vertical position or horizontal position, 100% donated. And that continues today. When we need something for the memorial, we ask. Look at the flowers, courtesy of our friends next door. It's much more than the fire department. It's much more than a piece of steel. It's part of our community. 20 years ago, 102 minutes changed history. 8:46 American Airlines Flight 11 crashed into the North Tower. What's amazing to me today is how we can watch this now play out. There was no Facebook, there was no social media. Most of the country didn't have anything much more than a flip phone. So I remember getting a page, and that's hard to express, right? But it was probably the modern era playing out because there's so many cameras on New York City at any given moment. I think one of the most memorable scenes is Chief Pfeiffer and various engine companies working on a gas leak with a French filming crew, in which they see the first tower hit. And they ring out the first call sign, Battalion 1 Manhattan. So for those of you in the non-fire world, he's a battalion chief and he's calling Manhattan dispatch. Escalates it to a 3-alarm fire within a matter of minutes. 3 alarms. It's more apparatus probably than what's in Livingston County. Right? And those folks, those men and women, they went to work to save lives when they hit those towers. 9:37 American Airlines Flight 77 slammed in, 9:03 United Airlines Flight 145 crashed into the South Tower. They knew at this point this was no longer an accident. 9:37 American Airlines Flight 77 slammed into the Pentagon. At this point, we knew we were under attack. And I think there's so much that we start to think about that was going on in public safety. I think we know what it takes. Just like this monument took a team more than the fire department, that day took heroic efforts that went above and beyond. You think of the civilians helping each other in the towers. You think of the firefighters going up. You think of law enforcement running in, saving lives. The military responding to their own at the Pentagon. I think about the dispatchers who were making sure they could communicate in all those scenarios to get them the resources they need. I think of the flight controllers who probably had to do one of the most Herculean things, and somebody had to step up and lead and say, we're shutting down U.S. airspace. Think about that. How many flights are going to go over our head today while we're here? And we shut it down. (10:03) United Flight 93 crashed into a field in southern Pennsylvania. I think those 102 minutes changed so much of us. And we use the phrase, never forget. We're lucky. Every day we drive by, we see this piece of steel. We see the interaction that the community has with it every single day. So what's it supposed to remind us about? Is it supposed to remind us that I'm supposed to be a great fire chief? That our firefighters are never going to know what they're going to? That our law enforcement could be under attack at any point in time? Or does it remind us of September 12th? Think back to September 12th. It was a little different. It wasn't like today. Local elected leaders, national, state leaders came together for what? To protect American people. There was support for public safety like we've never seen. You reached out, you called your family, you called your neighbors, you paused. There were no football games that first Saturday. They were canceled. And maybe that seems like a foreign memory on the heels of COVID, but there were no football games. One of the first ones back for those of us here, remember Michigan State went and played Notre Dame a week later. Both marching bands took the field in a complete whiteout. So does that piece of steel serve as some kind of reminder to you? So much we talk about the next generation, right? Some of our newest firefighters, law enforcement, dispatchers, paramedics weren't even born. We had the most recent academy here, and I struggle with, what am I supposed to tell them? I don't remember when JFK was shot. I wasn't alive. It was very important to a lot of generations. 9/11, how do we continue to share that message of how important it is? It's easy for us to say, as the fire service, we're the keeper of this memorial, we're the keeper of the community, we're the keeper of that spirit. But how do you teach an 18-year-old what you felt? The anger, the frustration, which went through every grief cycle into what's next. How do we tell them the stories of the firefighters, the civilians, the dads that came back to work the pile because their sons were trapped? Right? This still serves as a reminder that Chief Gansey that day was in the first tower that collapsed. They move the command post. They get them out. He begins to give orders that they've got to move the command post because he knew the next tower was going to collapse. And Chief Gansey went to work to go save lives on that collapsed pile. And he died when the second tower collapsed. Maybe it's that heroism that we have to continue to talk about. And maybe that's the stories that we have to tell. I hope you take time to reflect. It's a hard day. It's an emotional day for so many of us. There's going to be football games today. There's going to be football games and baseball games tomorrow. And they're going to pause and reflect at the Tigers game tonight. We paused last night at Brighton High School to remember. And that's what we need to do. And as we work to teach the next generation, I hope you teach them through your actions, through your love, your compassion. They're watching a national tragedy unfold right now with COVID. And we're teaching them what never forgets means through our actions. As chief, I'm always under the microscope. Our newest firefighters are always watching what our command staff does, how they speak, what they talk about. So I challenge all of you, if we're going to truly say never forget, what do our actions show? Not that you're here, but how do we treat each other? How do we work through problems? How do we build community like it was on September 12th? I'm so grateful that you're all here. And I'm so grateful to be the chief in this awesome community. You have the best public safety, law enforcement, dispatch, paramedics in this county that I could ever say. And I can tell you that we work together on a regular basis. We come together. You can see, look, we have a Howell truck, Putnam, Hamburg, emergency management, EMS, sheriff. Take time to reflect. Bring back that sense of community, and most of all, try to remember that feeling of unity, resilience, and that common purpose that we shared September 12th as Americans. God bless America, and thank you all for being here today. And with that, I'd like to welcome to the stage Senator Lana Tice.
It's extraordinary to be here 20 years later. I was here 10 years ago. I had the honor at that point of serving on the Brighton Area Fire Authority Board. It is truly an honor to be able to serve heroes. So thank you all. But at that point in time, I didn't realize what it felt like how different it would have felt. On 9/11, I was at home holding my little baby, and I was scared to death for my husband. He had a job at the Renaissance. That's an important building in Detroit. I thought they were at risk, and I didn't spend a second thought thinking about all the spouses of all the first responders who were running to that danger. And they do that every day in a different way. All of our first responders do. But I call you to never forget for 9/11, and never forget every time you hear one of those sirens. There's family out there scared to death that they're not going to see their loved one again. This was an extraordinary time that did bring our country together, and that was amazing. Thank you. We do need to bring our country back together. We need to remember we have so much more in common than we have differences with each other. Thank you all for being here today. What I have is a tribute for our first responders. This one is for the Brighton Area Fire Authority. It recognizes the sacrifice that they went through. It recognizes how many first responders we lost in 9/11, how many citizens we lost in 9/11. And it's the state's way to remember and to say thank you so much. Let's never forget, and we want to honor you.
Thank you, Senator Tice. And next, Mayor Sean Pipley with the City of Brighton, who also serves on the Brighton Area Fire Authority Board. Mayor Pipley.
I'm honored to be here today. Thank you all for coming out. The Chief asked me to share some of my experiences from that terrible day 20 years ago. 20 years ago, I started my day just like everybody else did, the normal routine. Got my car, turned on the radio. I was listening to Drew and Mike on WRIF radio. It was just after 9 in the morning, and they were talking about something incredible, that an airplane had accidentally slammed into the North Tower in New York. They couldn't understand how it was remotely possible for an airplane to accidentally hit the North Tower, because that's what they were thinking it was. It was an accident. 9:03 a.m., as I was pulling in my parking lot, the other plane hit the South Tower. And one of the hosts on the radio said, "Oh my God, was that another plane?" That was no small plane either. My God, this was no accident. This was clearly not going to be just another day. I turned around and I went back home to get a TV. Some of these younger guys may not remember the TVs with the wire antennas, but I went home and got one, plugged it in the office, and we turned it on so that we could see what was going on. And as we were watching it in total disbelief and utter sadness that this could happen in the United States, in America, in New York City, we just couldn't understand it. Then the other reports came in of the two other airliners crashing, one into the Pentagon, one into the field in Pennsylvania. And even further disbelief. We couldn't understand it at all. 9:59, the South Tower collapses completely and violently. Everyone in my office began to cry because we knew everybody had perished. At the same time, we began to get very angry. How could this happen in our country? How could this happen anywhere? 10:28, it happened again. The North Tower collapsed. On TV, you could see the dust and debris raining down over the streets of New York, directly onto the first responders who had responded. They rushed to the scene to save people's lives. It dawned on us at that point in time the tremendous loss of life that had just occurred. Further, there were police and firefighters that were there too. They hadn't just sauntered into these buildings to get a cup of coffee, but rather they rushed in to save people's lives that they had never met. This was the single most tragic day ever for firefighters and police officers. We cried for all who perished that day. I think of this every time I speak to a police officer or firefighter to this day. That was 20 years ago, and as I stand here today, I see the faces of police officers and firefighters who, being fully aware of what happened, have chosen to continue their careers and dedication in this profession. I also see the newer faces who have joined the ranks of the police and fire departments in spite of what happened 20 years ago. To me, this is unprecedented courage, conviction, and commitment. And for this, I respect, admire, and salute all of you who wear the uniform, and thank you for your service. Thank you. Now, Sheriff Mike Murphy.
I'd like to take this opportunity to thank Brighton Area Fire for their foresight to get a piece of the World Trade Center. As Chief O'Brien mentioned, that was quite a process, and for them to take the initiative and stick with it and get that phenomenal. And thank you also for the ceremony each year to help us remember and never forget. I'd also like to thank the folks in the audience that showed up today. You are giving up your most precious resource right now, your time. And that to me speaks volumes. This is an outstanding community, and for you to take time out of your day to be here is just in and of itself, again, speaks volumes. So I realize with this reading that I'm going to read that I'm painting with a broad brush and I'm using some generalizations, but this is not meant to be offensive or political. It's meant to be cerebral and reflective. Growing up, I always heard the old people talk about how, where they were when JFK was assassinated. They could describe in great detail not only where they were, but what they were wearing, the smells in the air, who they were with. They could account for their entire day, almost minute by minute. And I never really understood that. Folks my age have witnessed some tragedies, such as the space shuttle explosion, but it didn't seem to be etched in our minds the way JFK's assassination was to the previous generation. On September 11th, 2001, there was no doubt my generation understood exactly how a traumatic incident could be forever burned in our minds. We remember exactly where we were, who we were with, what we were wearing. We remember the sights, sounds, and smells. We remember the numbness, the sorrow, and the anger. We also remember the unity. We came together as a country like no other time in history that I had witnessed. We were strong and united for a common cause, rooting out the evil cowards that carried out such an attack against innocent Americans, just going about their day, trying to provide for themselves and their families. Our public safety professionals were hailed as heroes. We saw example after example of them having no regard for their own safety. They laid everything on the line to save and protect the masses, upholding the oath that we all took to protect and serve. My, what a difference 20 years made. The evil cowards have taken over an entire country and are more powerful than ever. Our own country is more divided now than at any other time in my life. Everyone is an expert on religion, politics, race, COVID, and diversity, to name a few. We are a powder keg with a very short fuse that is easily lit from some expert behind a keyboard trolling social media. We can't have a civil discussion or debate on any of these issues because we have lost the art of face-to-face conversation. Public safety professionals, especially law enforcement, have went from heroes 20 years ago to zeros today. There's proposed legislation that will gut our profession. This is the same legislation that also fails victims of crimes. Somehow it's more important to expunge, give second, third, and fourth chances, and keep career criminals out on the streets than it is to make victims whole. We are still the best country in the world. We have been through internal conflicts before, and we will see them again. However, we can only overcome this current internal conflict and become stronger as a nation if we begin to unify through open, honest discussion, not political agendas, trolling, or violence. If we take away the labels and start treating each other as human beings, regardless of race, ethnicity, religion, preference, or political affiliation. If we get back to dinners every night as a family and actually discuss the day's events. If we get back to church and trust the power of prayer. If we as parents become parents, not friends to our children. We need to provide them a safe, loving, structured, disciplined home where we teach morals, values, ethics, compassion, empathy, and responsibility. By doing so, the schools and the teachers can get back to the 3 R's. If we remember September 11th, 2001, and never forget. If we remember and honor those who lost their lives. If we remember and honor those families of those who lost their loved ones. If we remember there is evil in the world. And if we look at history and learn from it, not ignore it or try to change it. It's called history for a reason. Thank you all again. God bless you and God bless America.
At this point in the ceremony, we'll do the bell ringing service, which certainly many in public safety are familiar with for, well, I don't want to say all the wrong reasons, but very challenging reasons. Men and women of today's fire service, and really all of public safety, are confronted with more dangerous work environment than ever before. And we're continually changing our strategies, tactics to accomplish our tasks in that ever-changing environment. Our methods may change, but our goals remain the same as they've always been: to save lives, protect property, sometimes at a terrible cost. This is what we do. It's our chosen profession. It's the way we're wired, and it is absolutely the tradition of the firefighter. The fire service today is ever-changing, but it's steeped in traditions well over 200 years old at this point. One such tradition is the sounding of the bell. In the past, as firefighters began their tour of duty, it was the bell that signaled the beginning of that day's shift. Throughout the day and night, each alarm was sounded by a bell, which summoned these brave souls to fight fires and place their lives in jeopardy for the good of their fellow citizens. When the fire was out and the alarm had come to an end, it was the bell that signaled to all the completion of that call. When a firefighter died in the line of duty, paying the supreme sacrifice, it was the mournful toll of the bell that solemnly announced a comrade's passing. We utilize these traditions as symbols, which reflect honor and respect, cause us to remember those who have given so much and who have served so well. To symbolize the devotion of these brave souls had for their duty, a special signal of 555, which is 4 rings, 5 times each, represents the end of a comrade's duties and that they will be returning to quarters. And so, to those who have selflessly given their lives for the good of their fellow man, their task completed, their duties well done. To our comrades, this is their last alarm. they are going home. Thank you. If I could bring to the stage Captain Andrew Piskorowski. Oh, sorry. Nope, you're good. I skipped ahead. I was going to be okay with the impromptu speech by Andrew. Today we're steeped with tradition in many aspects, from the ringing of the bell to the laying of the wreath at the memorial. We're going to ask to come to the stage Melissa Bechtel, one of our firefighters here at Station 31, to play the violin. And I'm going to ask that the command leadership, as well as law enforcement leadership, come on forward and escort the Livingston County Sheriff Honor Guard as they place the wreath at the memorial.
Order. Out. Prepare to receive the wreath. Take the wreath. Wreath coming. Left. Right. Forward. March. Left. 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 Left.
Thank you to Melissa, as well as the Livingston County Sheriff Honor Guard. You can be seated. I think many of us always find Chief Greg Mowbray's remarks thought-provoking, inspiring, and I even think some of us wish we could speak at times like him. There is no doubt that Chief Mowbray serves a very unique role for the Brighton Area Fire Authority. His influence is on every single new firefighter that comes into Livingston County. So we're honored to have closing remarks from Chief Greg Mowbray.
Good morning. I find it very ironic that the weather this morning is essentially exactly the same as it was 20 years ago. Over the years, I've found myself thinking about the words that I would speak on this 20th anniversary. How would they be different from those spoken in the years past? How could I possibly convey a message that's a little bit different? How would this message be everlasting to the group? Would there be tears still after 20 years? Will the younger generation understand the pain that many of us feel? As I gathered my thoughts, the various memories of the day would come at some very odd times. And let me share some of those examples. The lighting of a candle and that first smell of a burning wax and wick. I distinctly remember standing in downtown Brighton on the first weekend following the tragic event, and the large number of people that had come together to share their grief and sorrow at a candlelight vigil. Part of that evening was my family joining me. My daughter was 2, my son was 6. As my wife held my daughter, my son wanted to stand with me and all the other firefighters from around the county. So up on the sideboard of the apparatus he stood, a burning candle in his hand, and as I looked around the very large gathering of people, all with long faces highlighted by the burning candle in their hands, the smell of those candles surrounded me. Another example would be the American flag slowly waving in the wind on a blue sky day. It doesn't matter the day, just the visual of the graceful movement of the blue field with stars, the red and white stripes. What draws me to that visual is remembering the large number of American flags being flown during the weeks and months that followed 9/11. The flag symbolizing our strength as a country, as a remembrance to those lost, and to the freedoms that we would uphold. No judgment of race, religion, political affiliation, just a simple way for individuals to show they care, are thinking about those lost or still unaccounted for. There is just something that draws me to those emotions out of the old glory slowly waving in the wind. Maybe it's the fact that hours after the building's collapse, firefighters George Johnson, Billy Eisengreen, and Danny McMillions found it so important to remove the flag and its pole from the Star of America, which was a yacht that had been moored at the North Cove Marina on the Hudson River, and raise that flag over Ground Zero. We have all seen that iconic photo, and many compared it to raising of the flag on Iwo Jima by U.S. Marines after a long, hard-fought battle. My interpretation of those actions by those first responders was much of those same Marines. Give me a job, and I will do it to the best of my ability. This is American soil with American lives, and we will not leave anyone behind, regardless of the work that needs to be done. So what has transpired over the 20 years? How are we a different country from that day back in 2001? Have we upheld that promise never to forget? That's a very loaded question. I have no intentions to speak or share feelings on political standings or how we may have shaped where we are today. But I will say where we stand as a nation, as a society, has changed immensely since 2001. If we remember back to that day, technology and phone world was flip phones, and soon to follow push to talk. What this meant is that you still had to dial a number and actually talk to another human. Texting was not a preferred way to communicate, as it took way too long to type out those messages. Social media was not even a term in the Urban Dictionary. Communication as a whole took place when one human would physically talk to another human. Fast forward to 2011, the 10th anniversary, and technology was changing fast. It was unheard of to still have a flip phone. And now we had the ability to carry a small computer around in our hand that could not only be used as a phone, but could access the internet, could send an email, allow us to text message to one another, and take really nice pictures. The world as we knew it, it was getting smaller and smaller as information was traveling faster and faster. But human interaction was slowly starting to slip away. Today, person-to-person interaction has become a lost art. The average human would rather pick up their 5G device that is more powerful than most small computers and communicate with friends and family through a GIF, a meme, photos, text messages, or social media. The downfall to all this type of communication is the inability to interpret true inflection of the message from the sender. And the reader comes up with their own meaning of inflection. As an example, a message in all capitals is somebody now yelling at you. And it's just not the cap lock stuck on. Heck, if somebody had to read a handwritten note from me, I would be considered yelling at them since I write in all capitals. I thank Ferris State University and the School of Architecture for that. Because of this, we've lost the ability to listen to a simple message without taking it the wrong way, or to hear another perspective and be able to disagree without losing a friendship over it. Social media has changed from sharing pictures of family, catching up with lost friends, to soapboxing personal opinions, not listening to the other side of the story, and flat out personal attacks to belittle another human. Heck, the simple knock on a front door has turned into putting people into a defensive mode, not trusting who is on the other side, or avoiding answering the door altogether. Not quite how we acted 20 years ago today. 20 years ago today, a nation came together as one. Families called or stopped by to check on one another. Neighbors would gather at the end of driveways just to talk to one another and share the latest updates of the day. Blood was being donated at a record pace. Money was being collected through donations by the millions. People wanted to do good. The sobering fact that we quickly learned that even though it took place in New York, the ripple effect was happening with somebody in your inner circle, either knowing somebody who was lost that day, who worked at the World Trade Center but could not get a hold of them, who's working the pile, or is on their way to assist. This event truly impacted a nation, and it did so very quickly. Shortly after the events of that day, a saying arose: to never forget. What did it mean? How is it going to be different from any other tragic event in American history? In the early dawn hours of December 7th, 1941, a swarm of nearly 90 Japanese aircraft converged on American naval base at Pearl Harbor on Oahu, Hawaii. The hour-long surprise attack would end up killing 2,390 unsuspecting U.S. servicemen and civilians. This would become the deadliest attack on U.S. soil. All of this happened while the U.S. and Japan were officially engaging in diplomatic negotiations for possible peace in Asia. Instead, it would become the catalyst that propelled the United States into World War II. What many do not know prior to December 7th is the United States was a very divided nation as to whether we should join the Allied war efforts in both the European and Asian theaters. Much like we were in 2000 with controversial election, that had become even more controversial with the recount and the Supreme Court decision. The attack on Pearl Harbor changed that stance and immediately united a divided nation overnight. Americans united against the Empire of Japan. 4 days later, the German and Italian empires declared war on the United States, and the United States reciprocated, formally entering the war into Europe. A poll was taken between December 12th and the 17th, 1941, and it showed that 97% of those respondents supported the declaration of war. Many believe that due to this attack and its effect on the American people so enormous that the declared enemies in both theaters of war were unable to counter the rebuttal of the woke sleeping giant known as the United States of America. The Remember Pearl Harbor became the watchwords of World War II. Move that clock ahead nearly 60 years, and we are once again attacked using planes by terrorists that did not have the capacity to destroy the United States militarily. So they set their sights on innocent civilians and symbolic targets instead. On the evening of September 10th, 272 passengers and crew members went to sleep in preparation for their morning flights. 2,606 people went to sleep in preparation for work the next day at the World Trade Center buildings. 125 military and civilian personnel went to sleep in preparation for work at the Pentagon. 343 firefighters went to sleep in preparation for their next shift. 60 police officers went to sleep in preparation for their morning patrols, and 8 paramedics went to sleep in preparation for their next rotation. All of these souls with dreams and aspirations of personal growth and success. Sadly, none of them saw past 10 a.m. September 11, 2001, due to the radical ideologies of the Islamic extreme terrorist network. In one single moment, life as we knew it would never be the same. We shall never forget became the watchwords of the lost souls that day. Police, firefighters, EMTs, soldiers, Marines, sailors, airmen, chaplains, co-workers, heroes on the 4 hijacked planes, they all confronted certain death to save others. All extraordinary people given no time at all to decide, but in the end, did the right thing. As I ponder these and other disturbing mental, emotional things that come to my mind about this day, I'm also mindful of the fact that there are no words that I or anyone else could offer here today that could ever truly erase the pain of the loss that is felt by the individuals those loved ones lived were taken away from them on that dreadful day. FDNY Captain Timothy Stackpool. On June 5th, 1998, Timothy Stackpool was severely injured on a 5th alarm fire in Brooklyn. 2 of his fellow firefighters were killed and more injured in a collapse at that fire. Lieutenant Stackpool spent more than 2 months in the Weill Cornell Burn Center with 4th and 5th degree burns, over 30% of his body. He endured many surgeries and years of grueling rehabilitation. During that time, he had 3 goals: to recover, to spend as much time as he could with his family, and return to full duty on the job that he loved. Against popular opinion, he succeeded. On March 10th, 2001, Lieutenant Stackpool returned to his job with the FDNY at Ladder 103. He was promoted to captain on September 6, 2001, with his wife Tara and his 5 children by his side. He worked his normal 24-hour shift on September 10th and was scheduled to be off in the morning of September 11th. Of course, he responded as the box alarms came in. He was killed when the South Tower collapsed. NYPD officer John William Perry, a graduate of the NY Law School. He had an immigration law practice before he ever went to the police academy. He was appointed to the NYPD in 1993 and was assigned to the 40th precinct in the Bronx, a borough of New York City. The morning of September 11th, he was off duty filling out his retirement papers at Police One Plaza. The next chapter of his life, he wanted to be a medical malpractice lawyer. That's when someone told him about the first plane hitting the World Trade Center. And instead of leaving his badge, he picked it back up, he dashed a few blocks to the scene, and it immediately began assisting the first responders with rescue operations. Perry was last seen helping a woman out of the South Tower when it fell just before 10 a.m. that morning. Brian Sweeney, a passenger on United Airlines Flight 175. Minutes before slamming into the World Trade Center on September 11, 2001, the 38-year-old had made a phone call to his wife from the back of the plane. He said in his phone call, "I'm on a plane. It's been hijacked. If things don't go well, and it's not looking good, I just want you to know that I absolutely love you. I want you to do good. I want you to have good times. Same with my parents and everybody. And I just totally love you. And I will see you when I get there. Bye, babe. I hope I call you again." After leaving that message, Sweeney then called his mother and told her that he loved her before the phone call abruptly ended. The call made at 9 a.m. that morning was completed 3 minutes before the plane crashed into the top floors of the South Tower. For those of us that have witnessed these events in real time, it has become our steadfast responsibility to carry on the watchword of September 11, 2001. We shall never forget. We need to continue to remember those lost by looking back at the goods that they did to make the world a better place. We need to continue to educate our young people about this day and speak to them about how this country came together as one. Speak to them about the facts and heroism that took place. Never forget. There are currently 65 on-duty members of the FDNY who lost their first responder fathers of September 11th. They watched them die either in the attack or of the disease that followed due to the toxic smoke and debris at Ground Zero. These young bravists, including 3 women, dedicated to the honor of their father's courage and sacrifice by following in their paths. Never forget, nearly 16,000 FDNY members were exposed to dust and particulates and the noxious gases, chemicals, and the fibers while working for more than 10 months in the rescue and recovery effort. More than 11,300 of them have been diagnosed and certified with at least one World Trade Center covered condition for physical or mental health. As of the end of March this year, 3,097 FDNY health program members had at least one 9/11 linked cancer, and hundreds of those people had multiple cancers. The grim statistic stands out as the 20 years since 254 FDNY members and 241 NYPD have died of 9/11 related illnesses, more than we lost on the day itself. Never forget the countless lives lost by our military, both overseas maintaining our safety and freedoms, and those back home that have lost their battles with the demons of war. We cannot thank you enough for the work that you have done over the past 20 years, allowing us to lay our heads down at the night and in comfort of our homes, safe and sound. Whether you stood watch on an outpost, covered the mid-watch on a bridge, provided cover for a spearhead advancement, or an overhead watch from the sky above, we welcome you home with open arms, and we are forever indebted to your service to this country. Never forget your local first responders who provide the first line of safety and service. 20 years ago, there was no defund police movements or fire apparatus having rocks thrown through windshields, or even worse, having EMTs attacked as they treated their patients. Livingston County first responders wake up every day to provide the best service possible to the residents and visitors. However, many don't know some of the personal struggles that these responders have had to deal with. In the last year alone, responders from Livingston County Sheriff, Brighton Area Fire Authority, Heartland Deerfield Fire Authority, Howell Area Fire Department, and Livingston County EMS have been in the fight of their lives, dealing with the same type of cancers that the responders at Ground Zero have had to deal with. Unfortunately, this disease is quickly becoming the leading cause of our death in the service of our nationwide. Regardless of volunteer or full-time status, more help is needed in supporting these warriors, both medically and financially. Many of us have fought very hard and are still fighting to get back on the job and provide for the community once again. But unfortunately, one has lost her battle, which has left an incredible emptiness within our ranks. Rest in peace, Kim McAvoy. We are forever grateful for your service. never forget. As you live and enjoy the breaths that you take today and tonight before you go to sleep, in preparation for your life tomorrow, kiss that you love. Snuggle a little tighter. Do not take 1 second of your life for granted. So as I stand in front of this memorial, I remind you that it cannot replace those 3,414 souls of 9/11. But what this memorial can do is provide you a solemn place to remember and mourn those that we did lose and continue to lose. Each of us mourning in our own way. Let this memorial continue to fan the flames of the American spirit, which burns in all of us. The flame that spells out our way of life will remain true, our principles of freedoms, and the defense of our liberty. Let this memorial be the reminder of that day of destruction and devastation did not condemn this country to a future filled with fear. No. Its loss, as profound as it was, did not break the soul of this nation. It made us stronger. The day fortified Americans with pride and patriotism and created a spirit of service in hearts of a new generation. It is now our duty to pass that message on to our children and they on to theirs. I leave you today with nothing more than the solemn words spoken by President Abraham Lincoln to a grieving mother who lost her sons in the war. I pray that our Heavenly Father may assure the anguish of your bereavement, and you leave only the cherished memory of the loved and lost. A solemn pride that must be yours to have laid such a costly sacrifice upon the altar of freedom. Thank you. God bless you, and may God bless America.
As we conclude today's service, just want to pause and reflect with a moment of silence here in a minute. It's hard because Grand River won't stop. I guess we can stop it. Last night at the football game, they paused for a moment of silence, and I don't think you've ever heard that football stadium so quiet. I think our kids get it. I think you all get it. So would you please rise for a brief moment of silence? Thank you, and God bless.
Nah. Bueno amigos, y terminó la ceremonia recordando el aniversario número 20 de los ataques terroristas del 11 de septiembre y los dejo acá con la imagen de del pedazo de metal de una de las torres gemelas.